Wow. Oh my gosh, wow. What a day. This is the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. What in the world? Oh my gosh. Welcome in. Welcome into the Joe Gaither Show. Welcome into BamaCentral.com. You're watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. And you can hear it in my voice. Oh my gosh, what a crazy day. Crazy. Whoa, what a wild afternoon. I had a gut feeling that I was like, I don't want to do my show yet. I don't want to do my show yet. I got to think about some more topics. I got to think about another topic or two. And then boom, a massive topic drops right on our heads. Oh my gosh. And I need some help to contextualize what just happened at the University of Alabama. So thank you all for paying attention to us on BamaCentral.com. You can follow all the news, everything that happens from 4 hours ago till the next couple of weeks right here on BamaCentral.com, your Sports Illustrated home for the Alabama Crimson Tide. I am very anxious and excited. Let's bring you on some help. My boss, Chris Walsh, is going to help me stay a little bit calm, and we're going to break down what in the world just happened. Chris, how are you, sir?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. I really am doing great. I'm just overly excited because what a moment we're living in. I mean, obviously, Nick Saban wasn't going to coach forever. Anyone who hasn't heard, Coach Saban has announced his retirement, according to Chris Lowe, about 4 hours ago, and you can read all about it on BamaCentral.com. So, Coach Saban was not going to coach forever, but I just feel so like I'm in the middle of a moment, Chris, like I'm in the middle of some history. So I'm really, really excited. I'm shocked. I was just over at the Malmore Center. All the players were leaving kind of to-go boxes, and they had their food. None of them really wanted to talk. They had some police escorts kind of keeping the media at bay. Just a wild time, Chris. Let's ask you, let's start with this. Tell us about 2007, because I wasn't here in 2007. I was a junior in high school, perhaps. And so, 16 years of Coach Saban. Just, can you help me? Where are we today?
It's funny because I'm sorry, 1 second.
Take your time. It's why it's absolutely. Chris is spearheading our coverage here at BamaCentral.com. So you can read about Nick Saban's top 10 moments. You can read some breaking news that we're working on behind the scenes. Ryan Williams has already decommitted from the University of Alabama. We'll see if we can get him back on board or not. Lots of crazy news, and Chris is dealing with it all.
Yeah, we're about to have a small breaking news item on the site, so you may want to keep looking at BamaCentral real quick. And yeah, it's kind of funny because I was thinking about it, and we're going to have to post the photo on the site really soon. But the press conference when Saban was introduced, I was like in the row pretty much, and I can only think of a couple other people who were in the room that day outside of myself. One of them is Kirk McNair, obviously, who's a legend in Alabama journalism. And I'm trying to think if there's somebody else. And right now, off the top of my head, I'm trying to. Well, John Zena from AP, he's been there the whole time. So, but it's. The reason why I sit there and say it feels like it's a moment in history. It's because it's a moment in history. I mean, it's the official end of the Saban dynasty at Alabama, and we're going to try to put it in perspective. We're going to be spending months trying to put this in perspective, and try to really do it in just a really magnanimous way, I guess is just the way to kind of put it. But Am I shocked? Yes, just because it's kind of one of those things you kind of were like, you feel like it almost like it wasn't going to end. But am I surprised? The answer has to be no. Because if you were really watching Saban this season in particular, you kind of saw some things that were more indicative of a coach who was kind of taking it all in and looking around and might be on his last go through. And I think that was kind of obvious. So I don't think a lot of Crimson Tide fans are going to be completely surprised. It's stunning, it's shocking, but it's everyone's kind of like, yeah, we kind of saw it coming. And the when Greg Byrne was hired years ago, he knew. I mean, he was brought on board for one thing in particular, and that was to have the next head coach ready. And I fully expect him to move very quickly.
It's kind of what we're hearing whispers about right now. I mean, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We want to appreciate everything that Coach Saban did for the University of Alabama. 6 national championships, 11 SEC titles, 9 national championship games. Basically, everything, all the growth around campus, buildings, enrollment, everything that's happened in Tuscaloosa. I mean, his impact is tenfold, not just on the football field. So you've got that part of it to appreciate the career, the 16 years. But really, I mean, you also have to, exactly as you alluded to, this is the University of Alabama. This football program was very proud before Nick Saban, and it will be very proud after Nick Saban. So really, you're hearing a lot of fans already. Quick drop of the hat. Who's next? Who's next? Who's going to keep the dynasty rolling? And I guess you're seeing some Vegas odds that maybe there's some whispers, some people have been contacted. I put out a list kind of in our text chain of about 10 or 11 guys. What's the initial feel for, I mean, you have more experience. What's the initial feel for some of the, for the successor?
Well, I mean, first off, Greg's had years to think about this, what kind of person he wants and so forth. And I'm absolutely positive Nick has had a lot of, impact on the decision, on and input. It's not going to be somebody completely out of the blue, I don't think. Greg has a history of trying to get the next big young person kind of thing. Nate Oates is a perfect example of that. One of the guys who's you're hearing some rumors about is Dan Lanning, who I think would be kind of an interesting hire. I doubt it would be Lane Kiffin, although I'm sure Lane would be very interested in the position. You're going to see some names flying around very, very quickly, and it's like I kind of shared with our staff a little bit. The odds in Vegas when Saban announced his, he was stepping down, you would think the odds would go down on Alabama winning the national championship. They went up. Vegas knows something, and that's always kind of a tell. So, NFL also right now you've got, Black Monday just happened, so you've got some people who are available there. The timing is really kind of interesting in that respect. So, long story short, I think we're going to get some very quickly on who the next coach is going to be. I don't think they're going to dawdle at all, and whomever it is going to be is going to get a great recruiting class, but let's face it, probably going to lose a couple people, but might bring a couple people with him, no matter where, depending on where he comes from. So everyone's going to be a little bit on edge here, but it's going to be short. I don't think this is going to drag out much at all.
Yeah, so the timing is very interesting in a couple of different aspects, Chris. The biggest thing to me that makes it interesting is Alabama's transfer portal window closed on Saturday. So Coach Saban, it's a little nefarious to say Coach Saban waited to make his announcement until after the portal closed. Obviously, the players will have an opportunity to go into the portal after spring practice. So that context has to be put there. But at least for now, the guys are kind of locked into the University of Alabama. So the next coach, if it is moved quickly, which I think it is going to be moving quickly, we'll have a whole spring practice to kind of say, hey guys, don't hit the portal.
Yeah, that's it exactly. And and also Kevin Steele stepping down. Maybe it's tied into this a little bit. Although I think with him, it's a little bit more of. I think he was here this last year as mostly of this is going to be my last season. But yeah, there's a number of different ways you can look at this and so forth. It's like I'm glad that you mentioned that the portal will be open again in April. It's not like they're going to sit there and say, no, you can't leave. No, come on. This day and age, it's different. But some of the things that I'm really interested to hear when we finally hear from the coach. I'm wondering how much the changing landscape of college football. He just went, I've had enough of this. And we've seen it with other big name coaches. Coach K in basketball is a great example. I think a lot of the old guard is looking at this and just going, "This is ridiculous," and it's just to me, it's another warning shot for the NCAA and big time college athletics that things are out of control and they need to get better. Even though he may not take that shot directly, I think indirectly at least. He's 72. It's not like I mean, granted, my mind, no one should ever tell somebody when they should retire. I think it's somebody should be able to walk away when they want to walk away and so forth, and that goes for coaching as well. But Bobby Bowden was obviously a bit older, and Joe Paterno was a bit older and probably stayed too long. But we're going to probably get something on the order of, I just know it was time, and that's it.
We got a lot of people watching this today on the Joe Gaither Show, obviously because of the breaking news. So I want to introduce all the viewers to Katie Wyndham, our senior writer here at BamaCentral. Katie Wyndham joins us on the program. You can follow her at Katie Wyndham _. Let's just open it right up to you, Katie. Chris and I have been talking. What do you make of what's gone down in the last 3 hours?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting this on my Wednesday afternoon. I'll say that. I mean, I'd heard things from people who are well connected throughout the year that if Saban won the national title this year, he might be done. And then obviously there were reports that came out during Rose Bowl week that kind of said things along those similar lines. But then since Alabama didn't win the national title, they lost in the semifinal. I just didn't necessarily see this coming now. Is it shocking to me? No. Is it surprising? Just the timing of it? A little bit, yes. So that's kind of been my initial reaction of, obviously there's been murmurings of this all year long, but I wasn't necessarily expecting it to happen today. I was not expecting it to happen today. I'll say that.
Well, I saw a comment or a post in a Facebook group that I'm in that Coach Saban will meet with the team at 4:00, and I just brushed it off. I was like, oh, whatever. And obviously that person was connected. I'm going to need to go back and pay attention to that, who that was, so I can watch them some more. You've got the transfer portal has closed. The window is closed. You've got fourth quarter ahead of us. I guess college football is now behind us. Chris already alluded to Black Monday. Katie, what's the most important thing that Greg Burns should be looking for in the next coach at Alabama?
I mean, it's an interesting position because this is obviously a desirable job. Some would argue the most, desirable job in college football, but it's also in ways going to be not desirable for guys because you're stepping in the shoes after Nick Saban, which is literally big shoes to fill. So I think it's going to be, Greg Byrne is kind of notorious for being the ninja, not letting stuff out before it happens. But I think it's going to be a guy that more than likely has some sort of connection to Alabama in some way, whether they coached here, whether they worked for Saban at one point, whether they played here, whatever it is. And it has to be someone that it's obviously not going to be this is not let's go find the best coordinator out there and promote him to head coach. This is the Alabama football vacancy. You're going to go out there and get one of the top names, someone desirably that has experience in the playoff or at a really high level. Right now the biggest name being floated out there is Dan Lanning at Oregon, a guy that has coached under Saban, spent some time in Tuscaloosa. But, there's also stuff coming out now. It wouldn't surprise me if Nick Saban kind of has a guy in mind. I talk about it being some guys, not maybe wanting to step in right after Saban, but I know one guy who does want to, and that's Lane Kiffin. He's not worried about that from things I've heard throughout this year. He's a guy who would be willing to step in right away. This is kind of the job he's always wanted. And obviously he spent time in Tuscaloosa. And then, you're also going to have to get a guy though that's a proven recruiter because you got to recruit the guys that are still here to keep him on the team. And then keep up the signing classes that you've had at Alabama.
Everett Osmer actually hits my next question. Do you all think Alabama has a backup coach? Because Katie, you just hit on maybe Coach Saban already has a guy in mind. You think about the staff right now. You've got Charlie Strong as kind of an analyst. You've got Ken Wisenhunt has kind of been a senior advisor to the coaching staff. Tommy Reese has been an up and comer in the program as well. He was very complimentary about Travaris Robinson and what he has been able to do for the defense. Chris, is there any chance that the successor is already on the staff?
I'm going to guess no. Kind of like Katie alluded to, the job's so big, you want somebody with head coaching experience, and most of those guys that you mentioned, I don't think so. I think they can all be head coaches. I think they can all do a good job. This is a unique situation. This is, like Katie said, this is Alabama at the end of the greatest dynasty in college football history, with a line, roster that's going to be loaded for next year. You're going to have probably the Heisman Trophy favorite leading things. It's just, I think they're going to want somebody who's proven in respect. It's got to be someone who's been a head coach at a big program, and done well. And like I said, don't root out the NFL guys. It's at this point, there are a lot of people out there who are suddenly available, and I wouldn't be surprised if Greg is kind of saw this coming, had a couple conversations, and has already sat down with somebody. We should rule out those kind of things.
Katie, you mentioned Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning, 37 years old. He's in his first head coaching position with the University of Oregon. He's 22-5 already with Oregon. He hasn't won a conference championship yet. Has he won at a high enough level for Alabama fans to accept him, or are we just getting sucked into the Dan Lanning hype based off the social media stuff from Oregon and Colorado that weekend?
I mean, has he won enough as a head coach at a high level? Probably not. But I think it's more that he has established a program and has had success there. And he also has experienced Alabama and has worked under Nick Saban. I think it's the combination of those two things. I think alone, if he was just kind of the hot coaching name in the college football world, a guy at Oregon, then maybe that's not who you're targeting. But I think combined with the fact that he has worked in Tuscaloosa, he's worked with Nick Saban, he knows the process, he's known how things have been. He'll have connections here. He's recruited the South. And now he's recruited the West Coast, that there's a lot of factors that make him an attractive. He knows how to run a program at a high level that has a big budget, Nike and all the Oregon stuff. He knows how to deal with big donors. So I think it's kind of the combination of that makes him an appealing offer. And then, it's interesting with Kirby Smart. You would think he's never going to leave Georgia. That's where he played, and he's won titles there. But Alabama can throw any coach a lot. That's another factor in this too, is that Alabama has the money to spend. They can go get whoever they want money wise. There may be some people that turn them down because of the positions they're in, but money wise, they can go do whatever they want.
Okay. Speaking of turning down based on positions that they're in, I'll throw you another name out here. Chris, you just talked about NFL names. This guy didn't get fired on Black Monday, but DeMeco Ryans just put the Houston Texans into the playoffs. Obviously, he's got a good NFL job, and he's only 1 year into it. Is there any way that Greg Burns says, DeMeco Ryans, you're the guy? Well, it's just, the timing probably wouldn't work out based on them in the playoffs and want to get him into Tuscaloosa. But he's an Alabama man. What's the percentage? What do you think the chances are that DeMeco Ryans takes over?
Probably not the greatest. And I like DeMeco. I think he'd be a very interesting candidate. He hasn't really coached at the collegiate level, which you got to recruit. I think he'd be a great recruiter. Don't get me wrong, and I think he'd be a wonderful addition. I doesn't feel right. Feels like the time isn't right, and kind of on the same wavelength. A guy that, if you would ask me a couple of years ago, I would have said Sark would be a great person to follow Saban. But I kind of wonder about, Texas going into the Big Ten, seems, made the playoff this year. Probably not going to, it's probably not going to happen, but weirder things have happened.
So my biggest thought right now is getting someone to say yes. I believe that Katie's absolutely right. This is one of the most attractive jobs in the country. But the thought that's coming into my head is Ray Perkins. Coach Perkins was a good coach. Coach Perkins was an Alabama man, but the complexity, the politics of the job, and obviously not following Coach Bryant in success, pushed him out essentially. How much is that going to be playing? Oh, I don't want to be the guy that follows the legend. I want to be the guy that follows the legend. Will it be hard to get somebody to come in after Saban, or is it just going to be Lane Kiffin? You're dumb enough to take the pressure. We know that you know what it's like. You just come on in. If you make it for 5 years, great. If you flame out in 2, then we'll just keep moving on.
It's tough because
Chris, ask your guest what. Just kidding. I was going to say, Chris almost had somebody come in, ask them what they think.
No, my apologies. It's my kids are home and we had to pull the grandparents in to help out, and we're giving me a signal. So
it's crazy. Katie, what do you think about Ray Perkins kind of influencing the parallels?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tough position for a guy to come in, but also this is not a program that's anywhere close to like dumpster fire state. In fact, the opposite. Depending on what guy comes in and how many guys he's able to retain, I mean, this is going to be a top 5, top 10 team going into next year. Talent-wise, Alabama, obviously the landscape's changing, but Alabama can keep up in the world of NIL. So that's not going to be necessarily a huge issue for whoever's new. And I'm sure more guys would like to maybe be the guy after the guy. But also, if Alabama offers somebody an insane amount of money, more than any other coach in college football is getting paid, that's going to be hard for guys to turn down just for the sake of, okay, Alabama's offering to pay me $15 million a year. No one else is getting that type of money. I'll take the job.
I've got $20 million buyout for Dan Lanning. I've got $10 million for Lane Kiffin. Maybe Steve Sarkisian at $13 million. Money is no object right now. Is that for Alabama? Is that correct?
Correct.
So with that being said, how soon do we think we're going to have an announcement? We're hearing whispers here at BamaCentral.com. Do we expect it before the end of the week? Are we going to make it maybe the rest of the month? What do you think Greg Byrne is? I mean, obviously no one knows Greg Byrne, but Chris, do you think Alabama fans will be on edge and be staying up, refreshing their Twitter feeds for the next 72 hours or so?
I will be surprised if this goes into the week. I think that's how fast it's going to happen.
Let me throw this at you, Katie, with a new coach. Everybody saw what Jalen Milroe did this year with Alabama. And Chris said it about 5 minutes ago that Alabama probably going to be having a Heisman Trophy favorite back into – and he is. Jalen Milroe had a great year, finished 6th in the Heisman Trophy voting. But Julian Sayin, class of 2024, 5-star, what is you've got a new coach coming in, and you're going to have options, whether you want to lean on Jalen Milroe and his skill sets, or whether you want to take the offense in a totally different direction, hit a hard reset, and have the program be your program. Do we think that there's going to be what do you think the exodus might be or could be at the end of spring practice?
It's really hard to know, but I think it's going to depend on what coach comes in. And can y'all clarify for me, or maybe just because there's been so much that's happening lately? Because I've seen multiple people saying stuff about the 30 days. I think people are saying now there will be a 30-day window where guys can enter the portal now because there's a coaching change. Is that correct?
Ooh, I know there's an extra window after spring practice, but Katie, I think you might be right.
I think what people are saying is that now because anytime there's a coaching change, guys are allowed to leave even if it's not within. Let me see.
Just like you, I'm thinking about Bob Huggins. Bob Huggins in the summer, he gets fired, and a lot of the West Virginia players hit the transfer portal, and Alabama gets Mo Wagi as a beneficiary. So our transfer portal window may have cracked wide open again, which is fine for us, and we'll follow it here at BamaCentral.com. But like, that's my. What direction does the new the talent is rich?
Yeah,
so retain the talent.
I think the overturn is going to, I mean, how much turnover there is going to depend on, that's going to be the new guy when he comes in, like his main job. Like when Nate Oates came in, he had to retain Kyra Lewis. Is that right? Or was it somebody else? It's, you talk to those guys, and some of them, and maybe you're not the best fit for, go ahead.
I'm just going to cut in right here because Nick Saban's wife just put out a statement via the Knicks Kids Foundation. This is from Miss Terry Saban. It has been an incredible run these last 15 years at the University of Alabama, and we take with us many amazing memories. We hope that the Saban legacy will be about helping others and making a positive difference in people's lives, as well as the winning tradition on the field. Our Knicks Kids Foundation will continue to help children, student, and teacher causes in the state of Alabama. The rules for the game of football may change, but the process will never go out of style. Hard work, discipline, the relentless pursuit of a worthy goal, not cutting corners, and doing things the right way for the sake of consistent personal improvement, not for the scoreboard. Alabama will always feel like sweet home to our family, and we'll be cheering Roll Tide. Katie, continue. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Crazy.
How fast did they build the Saban Center now?
Yeah, for real. But I think that's going to be the new head coach's biggest job is, convincing some guys to stay. And I think a lot of guys are going to want to stay because from people I've talked to, the last couple of weeks have obviously been or really, I guess it's only been like a week since the Rose Bowl loss, but it's been crazy with guys deciding whether or not to enter the portal. And obviously most of the guys that committed to stay, I'm sure thought Saban would still be their head coach next year. But I also think they've already gone through the whole thought process of should I enter the portal or not. And so I think there will be some guys that leave, whether the new staff pushes them out or they just don't want to play for somebody else besides Saban in Alabama. But I don't expect right now there to be massive turnover within the program, especially if they make this hire quickly and announce it and that guy can start meeting with the players right away. I don't expect there to be a lot of massive turnover.
It's going to be a huge weekend. I cannot wait for it. It's going to be crazy over the next couple of days. Chris, what's the biggest thing that we're going to be looking for? Bama's, I mean, obviously coaching rumors and who they're, but like, what's the kind of unspoken thing or off the beaten path aspect of this hire that we want our listeners and readers to be paying attention to?
That's a good question. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to wrap this up after this.
Yeah, feel free. Yeah, take off.
It's just a big part of it is going to be, you're going to see a lot of stuff flying from anywhere, and you're not going to know where it's coming from. So it's about who you trust and who has the history of bringing stories and so forth. And I mean, like we were talking before, it's myself and Kirk McNair, two of the old people that were in the room that day when Nick Saban was announced. And obviously things are going to change dramatically here in the next couple days. But take what you hear with a grain of salt moving forward. But it's obviously things are dramatically changing.
This is Chris Walsh, the editor-in-chief of BamaCentral.com. You make sure you follow him at Writing Walsh. Chris, thank you so much for guiding us through this crazy time. Whatever you need, let me know.
Okay, thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Let's check out a few more minutes, and as we continue. Golly, Katie, my brain, my stomach has been for the last 3 hours. I went over to the Mount Moore Center, and it seemed like. I don't really want to be hyperbolic, but it kind of seemed like a funeral. It kind of seemed like this cloud was over the building. I'll get you to answer Robert Moll's question. Do you think there has been a plan in place for this to happen, i.e., the Oregon head coach? Obviously, we've talked about Dan Lanning, but more so the first part. Do you think that Saban and Greg Byrne basically have been in cahoots over the last 3 to 6 weeks?
I don't think like Saban has been telling them or like the. Obviously, I'm sure Greg Byrne has had like contingencies in place. I don't think Saban and Byrne have necessarily been planning something the last couple of weeks. And I don't know anything for sure, but it would make a ton of sense that Nick Saban, how process-oriented he is, how organized he is, that he would have a succession plan in place, that he would have a major say in who the next guy is going to be, that he thinks would be the best person to take over the program. And look, my dad just made a good point to me over text, and that for people freaking out about Saban leaving, look what Les Miles did at LSU right after Saban left. He wanted Saban left a stocked pantry, in the words that my dad used, and it's still going to be that at Alabama for whatever guy comes in, especially if it is some sort of succession plan is probably not the right word, but a guy that Saban wants, a guy that Saban knows can take over the program, then it would make logical sense for that to be what Saban's had in place. I don't think because of the way that, like Greg Byrne kind of works and the way that Saban has been so focused on this past season, I don't think it's necessarily been something they've been discussing or planning because there's been reports out today that Saban has, was working all the way up until today and then kind of informed the team this afternoon. So I'm sure Greg Byrne always has people in mind. When I did my sit down with him back in August maybe or September, whenever it was, I think it was after the season had started, so maybe it was September. But I thought about asking him, what's his plan for whenever Nick Saban retires, but I don't think I did end up asking that in our time together. Now I wish maybe I would have to get a little more of that.
All right, so I'm going to throw out a bunch of names, and I want you to see if there's anyone I'm missing because we're going to cast a wide net here. Obviously, Dan Lanning, Lane Kiffin. We hit on D'Amico Ryans, Dabo Swinney we haven't talked about. We hit on Tommy Rees and Travaris Robinson. Mike Norvell at Florida State, Kellen DeBoer, and Steve Sarkisian are kind of this is my wide net. Is there any other names that you want to add into the net and make it even wider here as we start thinking about who's next?
I think that net pretty well covers it. Obviously there's been some big NFL news lately with some guys, head coaches leaving. But yeah, I don't, it's hard to picture a guy that's been in the NFL for a while with no ties to Alabama wanting to come take over the program in this spot and have to go back to recruiting and dealing with NIL and the portal and all of that stuff. But I mean, this is the time of year when a lot of coaching changes are happening. So, I mean, and it is Alabama. It's probably the most attractive job in college football. So if a guy wants to change the pace, you never know. And he would get compensated handsomely. So I think that's also a thing to keep in mind is that I wouldn't say no shot or never on anyone just because of the money Alabama will be willing to pay someone. And look, we've seen in the past Nick Saban or Nick and Terry donate like $1 million at a time to Alabama causes. And I'm not saying Nick Saban's going to be like directly paying for the new head coach, but I'm just saying money is not an issue for Alabama. And I also wouldn't be surprised if that's somehow in play too.
What a wild day, Katie. I thought I was going to have a show today talking about replacing the defensive coordinator and talking about Alabama's win against South Carolina last night. But both of those stories are pretty much irrelevant at this point. My next thought on the coaching stuff is Coach Saban and his impact on Alabama. When you get a new guy in, let's think about when it was Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Bowden. How much do you think, or what do you think the influence? Do you think Coach Saban's going to head on to Lake Martin and just kind of wash his hands of the program, or do you think he's going to be a guy that kind of hangs around? Hey, call me if you need me. I'll be there on Thursdays to advise you. Whatever the one day a week is. What do you think his involvement is going to be with the University of Alabama post head coaching career?
Well, that's kind of what I was just thinking about is if you're the new guy, do you want Saban not hovering, but do you want him around or do you want to do your own thing? Because, I mean, I feel like the Sabans have made clear, and I'd have to go back and read that statement from Miss Terry, but that they're going to stay in Alabama. This is their home now. They've they have their house at Lake Burton. They have the, $17 million house in Florida or whatever, but I think they're going to keep their Tuscaloosa house. Their children live in Alabama. The whole Saban Center that's being built around downtown Tuscaloosa, they've, sunk roots into this community. So, once again, I think it kind of depends on, if it is kind of a Saban succession plan and a guy that he wants, to come in and take this job. Maybe it's a guy that he continues to have a relationship with and kind of mentor, and that, I think that'll kind of depend on his level of involvement. It makes me think, I talk about with people a lot of times, I feel like coaching searches and like pastor searches are similar in that like you kind of like move up levels, like bigger churches and like, or people will go from like assistant ministers and then they'll be the full pastor at like a little bit bigger church before they can be a pastor at a head church. And it's like the church I grew up at, our pastor retired after like 30 years there. And he's technically the pastor emeritus now. So he's around a little bit, but also letting the new guy have his space. And so it's like, is Nick Saban going to be the head coach emeritus kind of around for whatever, or is it going to be, because obviously Alabama will welcome, as a program, as a department, as a school, whatever ways he still wants to contribute. If he still wants to have an office there, if he still wants to have that parking spot, I'm sure they'd let him have it. But also, I think that the big point of him retiring is to be able to go spend more time with his family, his wife, his kids, his grandkids, to not be tied to the Malmore complex, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week for the majority of the weeks of the year. And so I hope for his sake that he's, gets to enjoy retirement. I've also seen stuff about him maybe taking Lee Corso's spot on College Game Day. I'm sure we will see some of that, some of TV commentator Nick Saban in the future. But yeah, I think once again, it's just going to kind of depend on, how close Saban is with the guy that comes in and how much that guy wants Saban's help and influence, which you would think they would want.
Yes.
I taking over for Nick Saban would want to have his listening ear.
Absolutely. I would too, Coach. I'm having trouble with this. How would you handle it? Oh, well, just do this, Oh, man, wild. All right, we're going to answer Everett Osmer's question here. Joe, can you tell us where to sign up for Bama Central? We're right there, easy, BamaCentral.com. We're on social media at Bama Central on X. We're at Alabama Crimson Tide on Sports Illustrated on Facebook, and we are at Bama Central SI on Instagram. One more from Everett for Katie. Katie, whoever is the next head coach, do you see them raising the ticket prices?
I don't see – look, Tide Pride has already really jumped their prices the last couple of years. Football tickets have already gotten really expensive. And with the way the scheduling is now, with a bunch of these big-time non-conference matchups coming in, I think ticket prices anyway are going to be more. I don't think that the head coach is going to – the coach themselves has no say over the ticket prices. That's all in the business side of athletics. So I don't think the head coach is necessarily going to raise ticket prices. One thing that's going to be really interesting to see is I missed the beginning of the show when Chris was on here, but when him talking about him and Kirk being some of the only people that were at the Saban introductory press conference, Saban's first A-Day in 2007 was pretty iconic for how packed that stadium is. So it'll be interesting to see come this April what the crowd is like, and because it's just I think we're all kind of in that shock phase right now where, yes, we're talking about Nick Saban no longer being the head coach, but I don't think it's like sunk in yet that the next time we see Alabama football, Nick Saban will not be the ones leading out of the tunnel. There's no more Saban, weekly press conference. We'll have, I'm assuming, one tomorrow, some sort of retirement press conference. And then probably within a day or two, it'll be an introductory press conference for someone else. And so I'm going to be interested to see what that A-Day game looks like with this new head coach after 17 years, almost 2 decades of Saban.
Katie, I'm going to dismiss you right now because Coach Saban just put out a statement from Josh Maxson. I'm going to read it to our fans, and then we're going to get on that so we can get that out here. This has been a great time, a great day on the Joe Gaither Show. I appreciate everybody watching. Here's Coach Saban's statement via the Alabama Athletics facility. Alabama Athletics. The University of Alabama has been a very special place to Terry and me. We've enjoyed every minute of our 17 years being the head coach at Alabama, as well as being a part of the Tuscaloosa community. It is not just about how many games we won and lost, but about the legacy and how we went about it. We always tried to do it the right way. The goal was always to help players create more value for their future, be the best player they could be, and be more successful in life because they were part of the program. Hopefully we have done that, and we will always consider Alabama our home. Greg Byrne goes on to comment, simply put, Nick Saban is one of the greatest coaches of all time in any sport, and the University of Alabama is fortunate to have him leading our football program for the past 17 years. Throughout his career as a head coach, his teams have won 7 national championships, 11 conference championships, and 312 games. And he's developed an NCAA record 49 first-round picks, and more importantly, hundreds of college graduates. He is the consummate coach, mentor, and leader, and his impact is felt far beyond the football field. Coach Saban and Miss Terry have touched countless lives in our community and the state of Alabama with the work they've done through the Knicks Kids Foundation. While his time as our coach may have come to an end, his legacy will live on forever. What an honor it has been for us to have had a front row seat for one of the best to ever do it. A truly remarkable career for Coach Nick Saban. What a day, Katie. What a day. We're gonna get out of here for the day. I appreciate everybody who's watched us today on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. We do it pretty much every weekday. The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral. We appreciate anybody who's going to like, rate, subscribe to us. Send me your comments, questions, queries, and complaints at Joe Gaither 6 on all the social media machines. Find Katie Wyndham at Katie Wyndham _. We'll be all over everything that happens for every second of the way right here at BamaCentral.com. It's a wild time to be an Alabama fan, and we'll be covering it. Katie, any last thoughts for you? How appreciative are you to be in this moment? I'll just ask that.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I was very unprepared for the moment. I was at the car wash vacuuming out the back of my car, and so I was nowhere, and then I had to hurry home thinking there might be a press conference tonight, but I just saw a tweet that really I haven't seen this aspect of it covered yet, that how much Nick Saban grew, the University of Alabama as a whole, how enrollment almost doubled in his time here, how the community of Tuscaloosa, how the campus has grown, and it's not all directly tied to him, but a lot of it is tied to him and his success and just also the way that they've invested in the community, the way he turned around a program that had been in the dumps for a while and brought it back, not just to its glory, but to a dynasty that has never been seen in the sport and honestly will probably never be seen again.
Well said, Katie. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Joe.
No problem. That's Katie Wyndham joining us right here on the show, and we were joined by Chris Walsh as well, both senior writers and executive director of BamaCentral.com. Really appreciate them joining me for their perspective. It's been a crazy day. The butterflies in my stomach have been going really since about 4 o'clock, since the news happened. We're going to follow it all. I think, my gut feeling, I do think Dan Lanning is the guy, and I think that they've already started to work out details. I'm not saying that with any news. I'm not saying that with any certainty or any sources. That's just kind of my gut feeling. I want to make that clear that is a Joe Gaither gut feeling. Look, there's a lot of names out there. I would be surprised if Dabo Swinney made the move. I think one of the things that Greg Byrne is going to look for, as Katie and Chris both alluded to, a younger coach who's going to be ready for the changing landscape of college football. Dan Lanning at 37 years old, been rocking and rolling with Nike and Oregon. I mean, they're the cool hit program. He can just come right here and utilize all the resources at the University of Alabama. My biggest question is going to be what Coach Saban's role will be after retirement. How involved will he be? My thought right now is he's going to be the head man for Yay Alabama, not necessarily in name, not necessarily in position, but when Yay Alabama wants to raise money, they're going to get Coach Saban to come speak to whatever touchdown club or whatever alumni association. They're going to probably use Coach Saban to become a fundraiser in his second part of his Alabama career. It's been a blast to cover it. Oh my gosh, we were over at Malmore Center. We will be over at Malmore Center whenever anything happens. I appreciate all the people that I texted with earlier today. Players and sources as well. Wild day. You can follow us at Joe Gaither 6. You can follow us at BamaCentral, at BamaCentral SI on Instagram, at Alabama Crimson Tide on Sports Illustrated. We're going to be putting out all kinds of news right there at BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com.